Losing my dog wasn't just stressful. It was one of those panic-fueled moments where your whole body goes cold, and your thoughts immediately spiral to the worst-case scenarios. Charlie had slipped his leash during our usual walk around Pinewood Park, chasing a squirrel with such determination that he was gone before I could even yell his name. One second he was there, tail wagging, and the next, empty leash, cold hand, silence. I spent the next hour shouting his name like a maniac, brushing through bushes, squinting into shadows, checking every corner of the park and surrounding neighborhood. No Charlie. I made it home after dark, defeated, dusty, and angry at myself. I'd only looked away for a second. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time a car passed outside my window, I flinched, hoping to hear the familiar clink of Charlie's collar. Instead, I got silence. I lay there, scrolling through old photos of him. This big goofball with floppy ears and eyes too soulful for his own good, wondering if I'd ever get him back. The next morning, I skipped work and printed flyers at the corner print shop. Lost dog. Charlie. Friendly, golden, blue collar. Last seen near Pinewood Park. I posted on every lost pet forum, sent texts to friends, and walked the neighborhood hanging flyers on poles and taping them to storefronts. I got polite smiles, a few sympathetic "I'll keep an eye out" comments, but mostly nothing. Then, around noon, I got a text from an unknown number. "Hi, I think I found your dog. Golden retriever? Blue collar? Answers to Charlie?" I froze. I stared at the message for a full 3 seconds before fumbling my phone and calling the number. A guy picked up immediately. "Hey, this is Eric, right? I saw your flyer outside the corner bakery." Yes, that's me," I said quickly. "You have Charlie. Is he okay?" "He's fine. He wandered into my backyard this morning. My fence gate was open for like a minute, and he just walked in. He's been hanging out on my porch, super friendly. I gave him some water." Relief crashed through me so fast I had to sit down. "Oh my God, thank you. Seriously, I can be there in 10 minutes. "Take your time," the guy said. "He's safe, and he's kind of adorable." He gave me the address, just a few blocks from where Charlie had run off, and I was already grabbing my keys before the call ended. When I pulled up in front of the house, it took all my restraint not to leap out and sprint to the door. It was a quiet street, with older craftsman-style homes, each with front porches and tidy hedges. As I got out of the car, the door to the house opened, and a guy stepped out holding Charlie's leash. Charlie saw me and immediately lunged forward, barking his happy bark, tail whipping wildly. I dropped to my knees as he barreled into me, licking my face and letting out that soft whine he always made when he was excited. I hugged him tight. Probably too tight, but I didn't care. "You scared the hell out of me," I muttered into his fur. "Never do that again, you little idiot." Behind me, the guy who'd called me stood quietly, hands in his pockets. When I looked up, I finally got a good look at him. He was tall, with kind eyes, and that sort of gentle handsomeness that sneaks up on you the longer you look. His dark hair was slightly messy, like he'd been running his fingers through it. He wore a gray hoodie and jeans, and had this calm presence that made you feel like everything was okay now. "I'm Leo," he said, smiling a little. "I'm guessing you're Eric." I stood, still gripping Charlie's leash. "Yeah, that's me, and thank you. Seriously. I didn't sleep last night. I thought I lost him for good." Leo nodded. "No problem." He came right up to me like we were old friends, sat on my porch and refused to leave. "I checked his collar, saw your info, then saw your flyer a few blocks over." "He loves porches," I said, smiling. "Especially if someone's sitting there with snacks." "Well," Leo said, glancing at Charlie, "he got half a turkey sandwich and my heart, so mission accomplished." I laughed, the tension in my body finally starting to fade. Charlie sat between us now, panting happily, like he hadn't just caused a small emotional disaster. Leo hesitated, then looked at me with a sort of hopeful curiosity. "So, I know this is random, but would it be weird if I asked if he'd want to get coffee sometime?" I blinked. "Coffee?" He scratched the back of his neck. "I don't know. I don't usually ask random dog owners out, but I don't usually find golden retrievers on my porch either." And you seem cool. I looked at him, this quiet, kind stranger who found my dog and handed him back without hesitation, and I realized I didn't want to say no. Yeah, I said slowly, a smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. I'd like that. Charlie was knocked out cold in the passenger seat by the time we got home, curled up like nothing life-altering had happened in the past 24 hours. I kept glancing at him as I drove, half laughing, half wanting to cry again. Relief does weird things to you. I swear I could still feel the moment my body stopped buzzing with panic the second I saw him barreling toward me earlier. But what really stuck with me, what replayed in my head even more than that, was Leo asking if he could see me again. Coffee sometime? No hesitation? No overthinking. Just asked. I pulled into my driveway and carried a half-awake Charlie inside, dropping his leash on the counter before collapsing on the couch. Charlie immediately hopped up beside me, pressing his face against my chest like he knew he owed me an apology. I should be mad at you, I muttered, scratching behind his ear. But you're cute, so I can't. My phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Glad he's home safe. For real. Then a second one. And no pressure about the coffee thing. Just figured I'd ask. I stared at the messages for a solid minute, biting the inside of my cheek. The truth was, I hadn't dated anyone in months, not for lack of trying, but nothing ever clicked. Not really. It was always too forced, too awkward, too much like an interview rather than two people actually wanting to be around each other. But with Leo, I didn't know. There was something different, even in that brief moment on his porch. Something steady, something warm. I typed back, no pressure needed. Coffee sounds nice. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Tomorrow? I snorted. Direct. I liked that. Yeah, tomorrow works. Cool. There's a place near Pinewood Park. Noon? See you there. When the bubbles disappeared, I set my phone down and leaned back. My heart was beating too fast for someone who just made a coffee plan. I chalked it up to adrenaline, fatigue, and the emotional roller coaster of losing, and then finding my best friend. But deep down I knew it wasn't just that. The next day, Charlie was practically attached to me, like he thought I might disappear the way he had. He followed me into the bathroom, sat by the shower, stared at me while I got dressed like some kind of furry guardian angel. I kept telling him, I'm literally just gonna get coffee, dude. But that didn't matter. He kept pacing until I grabbed my keys. Fine, I said, laughing. I'll take you for a walk when I get back. Charlie huffed, clearly not satisfied with those terms. The cafe was busy in that Saturday morning in a small city way. People sitting outside with laptops, couples with strollers, joggers grabbing iced coffees with sweaty determination. I stood by the entrance for a second, scanning the crowd. Then I saw him. Leo was seated at a table by the window, wearing a light jacket over that same gray hoodie from yesterday. His hair was slightly neater, but still a little chaotic in a way that worked on him. He looked up at the exact moment I spotted him, and when his eyes met mine, he gave this small, genuine smile that made something loosen in my chest. I walked over, trying to appear cooler than I felt. Hey, he said, standing up slightly as I approached. Hey, hope I'm not late. You're right on time, he said. I already ordered us drinks. I guessed on yours. I figured you seemed like an iced vanilla latte guy. I raised an eyebrow. That's suspiciously accurate. He shrugged. Lucky guess. He wasn't just good looking. He was handsome in a way that didn't feel intimidating. Kind looking. The type of guy who probably helped older neighbors shovel snow without making a big deal about it. We sat, and the conversation started easy. Surprisingly easy, actually. I told him how Charlie usually stayed glued to my side, except for that one squirrel-chasing moment of betrayal. He told me he'd grown up with dogs his whole life, but currently didn't have one because his work hours were chaotic in a deeply unsexy way. He worked in tech, some hybrid job that involved design and data. Not exciting, he said. It's exciting enough to afford a porch and a backyard. I joked. He laughed. Okay, fair. But that's because I inherited the place from my uncle, not because I'm out here making six figures for writing code. We talked for almost an hour before either of us realized it. It felt natural, like I was catching up with someone I'd known longer than a day, and there was nothing he did that felt performative or forced. No cheesy flirting, no over-the-top charm, just a guy genuinely enjoying being there. At one point, he hesitated, tracing his thumb along the edge of his cup. "I'm really glad you said yes," he said quietly. I glanced at him. "To the coffee or to getting my dog back?" He huffed out a laugh. "Both, but mostly the first one." There was a brief pause, the kind that isn't awkward, but loaded. The kind where the air shifts just slightly, as if acknowledging something neither of you are saying out loud. I cleared my throat, suddenly warm. "I'm glad you asked." Before either of us could say anything else, his phone buzzed. He grimaced, glancing at it. "Work emergency," he sighed. "I'm really sorry. I swear I'm not trying to bail." "It's fine," I said, standing. "We can hang out another time." He nodded, but didn't move right away. He looked like he wanted to say something else, something more, but held it back. "I'll text you," he said finally. "Okay." As I stepped outside, Charlie's empty leash still looped in my pocket. I caught myself smiling like an idiot. I didn't realize it then. But that coffee wasn't just a one-off. It was the start of something much bigger, something I wasn't ready for, but something I wanted anyway. I didn't hear from Leo that night. Not that I expected hourly updates, but after how well the coffee went, I thought I'd at least get a "made it through the work emergency" text or something. Instead, silence. Charlie, of course, was blissfully unaware. He spent most of the evening sprawled across the living room rug, occasionally lifting his head to make sure I was still within eyesight, like he was the one afraid of losing me. "Where was this loyalty yesterday?" I muttered, as he wagged his tail lazily. I tried not to overthink it. People got busy, work emergencies happened. And it wasn't like we had a relationship or anything. We'd only met, technically, twice. One time involving a missing dog and mild panic, the other involving iced coffee and unexpectedly good conversation. But something about the way he'd looked at me before leaving kept replaying in my mind. That hesitation. Like he wanted to say more. I didn't fall asleep until almost 3 a.m. The next morning, I was halfway through making breakfast when my phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't expect it to be him, but it was. "Hey, sorry for the sudden vanish yesterday. Work dragged me into a crisis that lasted all night. Then, are you free later today? I owe you an actual, uninterrupted hangout." I stared at the messages, trying not to grin like a complete idiot. Charlie stared at me over his bowl, chewing loudly like he could sense something was up. I typed, "Yeah, I'm free." "Cool. Want to go for a walk later? Maybe with Charlie this time? I think he likes me." I laughed. "He likes everyone. But yeah, let's walk." "What time?" 4. "I'll meet you near the park entrance." And just like that, the quiet spot in my stomach, the one that had felt weird all night, eased. I spent the next few hours cleaning the apartment for no reason other than nervous energy. I wasn't even hosting him, but suddenly the idea of him ever seeing my place made me mildly concerned about my laundry pile and the stack of Amazon boxes I hadn't broken down yet. By 3:40, Charlie was bouncing like he knew exactly where we were going. He danced in circles while I clipped on his leash, his tail brushing my legs so fast it was like a small fan. "Be cool today," I warned him as we walked out. "No rolling in mud, no eating trash, and definitely no running off again." Charlie sneezed, which I took as no promises. We reached the park entrance at 3:59, which meant, for once in my life, I was early. Leo arrived a few minutes later, jogging across the grass, his hair mussed by the wind. He wore a navy jacket over a white t-shirt, and somehow managed to look effortlessly good in a way that felt unfair to the rest of us. "Hey," he said, slightly out of breath. "Sorry, I couldn't find parking. "You're good," I said. "We just got here." Charlie pulled me forward the moment he saw Leo, tail wagging so hard his whole back half wiggled. Leo crouched down, letting Charlie practically drown him in kisses. "I missed you too, buddy," Leo laughed, scratching under his chin. "Thanks again for returning him to his actual owner, though." "I mean, I thought about leaving him with you," I joked, "but I figured I'd miss him eventually." Leo stood up, smiling, this easy, unforced smile that I felt in my chest in a way I shouldn't have felt after knowing him such a short time. "So," he said, "walk? Walk!" And we started down the main trail. It surprised me how quickly it felt normal with him. Some people you need time to warm up to, some people you have to decode. With Leo, it was like jumping into a conversation that had already started. He told me about work. Turns out crisis meant his team accidentally deleted half a client's database. His words, not mine. I told him about my job at the marketing firm and how my supervisor insisted on calling every brainstorm a vision huddle. We laughed more than two near strangers probably should. Charlie trotted happily between us, occasionally pulling ahead to sniff things, then trotting back like he needed to check that we were still talking. At one point, we stopped on a small wooden bridge overlooking a creek. The water was low, a thin ribbon catching the afternoon light. Leo leaned on the railing and looked over at me. "You know you're different than I expected." I raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" He shrugged, eyes dropping to the water. "I don't know. When I first saw you on your flyer photo, you looked serious? Like the type who hates small talk and avoids strangers?" I barked out a laugh. "And what changed your mind?" "Well," he said, looking up, "you smiled at me yesterday, and it was a nice one. My stomach did a weird little flip." "Oh," I said softly, feeling suddenly warm. "Sorry," Leo added quickly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Too much?" "No," I said, "not too much." He nodded, relief easing across his face. For a moment, neither of us moved. Charlie sat at our feet. Watching ducks float by like this was the most peaceful afternoon of his life. Then Leo spoke again, quieter now. "I really am glad I found him, you know." "Yeah," I said. "Me too." "No, I mean..." His voice trailed off. He exhaled, then tried again. "It's stupid, but meeting you feels like something I wouldn't have stumbled into otherwise." I blinked. That was a lot, but in a good way. Before I could answer, Charlie suddenly lunged toward the side of the bridge, barking excitedly at the water. I yanked the leash just in time. "Dude," I scolded. "Are you trying to take a swim?" Leo laughed, the tension breaking instantly. "He's got good timing." "Too good," I said, shaking my head. "He might have saved me from oversharing," Leo added. I glanced at him, smiling a little. I didn't mind. He held my gaze for a second longer than he needed to. Something stirred in his expression. Something careful. Something hopeful. But he didn't push it. And neither did I. We kept walking. What I didn't know then, what I couldn't have known, was that this walk was just the beginning. And the thing Leo almost said? He wasn't done trying to say it. Not even close. We walked for another hour, looping through the park as the afternoon light softened. It wasn't until we were halfway down a quieter trail, a narrow path lined with tall grass and late summer wildflowers, that I noticed how close we were walking. Not touching, not brushing arms, but close enough that if either of us leaned even slightly, something would have happened. Charlie trotted ahead of us like a scout, occasionally glancing back to make sure we hadn't vanished. Every so often he'd stop and sniff something intensely for 5 seconds before deciding it wasn't worth his time. "It's kind of embarrassing," I said at one point, nodding at Charlie. "I've had him for years and he still acts like he's got one brain cell and it's on break." Leo laughed. "I don't know. He seems pretty attached to you." "Yeah, when he's not running off into the void." He looked at me then, not at Charlie, not at the trail ahead, but directly at me. For what it's worth, he said quietly. I think he came back because he wanted to. Dogs have good instincts. I wasn't sure if he meant instinct about friendliness or instinct about people in general. The way he held my gaze made it feel like maybe he meant the second thing. Before I could ask, Charlie sneezed loudly and flopped onto the grass, rolling around like he'd been waiting hours for the perfect spot to ruin his fur. Leo snorted. There's your soulmate. Every day I question why I didn't get a fish, I said, watching Charlie go feral on the ground. We kept walking until we eventually circled back toward the main entrance. The park had thinned out. Most people had gone home for dinner. The sun was lower now, hitting the tops of the trees and turning everything warm and gold. Leo slowed his pace. I don't really want to head back yet, he admitted. Same. Want to sit for a bit? There was an empty bench under a big oak tree just off the trail. We sat, Charlie immediately curling up at our feet like he'd finally exhausted his chaos reserves. Leo rested his arms on the back of the bench, his fingers tapping lightly against the wood. So can I be honest with you? Oh boy. Yeah, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. He looked forward for a moment before turning back to me. I didn't expect this. Expect what? He hesitated, but didn't look away. To like you this fast. The words weren't dramatic or showy. They weren't offered with a smirk or some flirty grin. They were simple, soft, real, and they knocked the wind right out of me. I swallowed. I wasn't expecting that either. A small smile curved on his lips. Good. I was worried I was being weird. You're not, I said quickly. You're not weird. Then this next part might be. He took a slow breath. I wanted to kiss you earlier. My chest tightened, not in panic, but in that warm, sweeping way something unexpectedly good hits you, like your body recognizes the truth before your mind does. On the bridge? I asked. He nodded. Yeah, I thought so. His eyes widened slightly, like he wasn't expecting me to say that. You noticed? I'm not blind, Leo. He let out a breathy laugh. Then, quieter. And you wouldn't have pushed me away? I licked my lips, suddenly hyper-aware of how close we were sitting. No. For a moment, neither of us moved. The sounds of the park slipped into the background. A couple of kids laughed somewhere in the distance. A bike rolled past on gravel, but all I could feel was the shift between us, subtle, careful, and unmistakably real. Leo leaned in slightly, not enough to be dramatic, but enough to make my heart kick against my ribs. His eyes searched mine, checking, asking. I didn't lean in. I didn't pull away. I waited. Then, Charlie chose that exact second to stand up, shake violently, and slap both of us with a cloud of dust and grass. Leo jerked back, coughing. I groaned. Dude, come on. Charlie stared at us, tail wagging proudly like he'd done something important. Leo laughed, running a hand through his hair. Wow, amazing timing. He has a gift, I muttered. The almost moment deflated, but not in a bad way. More like the universe tapped us on the shoulder and said, not yet, but soon. Leo brushed dirt off his jeans. We should probably accept that he's the third wheel here. He's been third-wheeling since the second he was born, I said. Leo smiled softly but didn't push the moment further. Not in a disappointed way, just in a patient way. A way that made my stomach warm. Can I walk you home? He asked. I blinked. Yeah, that'd be nice. So we did. Charlie tugged ahead, leading us down the sidewalk like he was escorting royalty. Leo walked close enough that our arms brushed once, then twice, and neither of us pretended not to notice. When we reached my street, Leo stopped at the curb. This was really nice, he said. Yeah, it was. He shifted like he wanted to say more again, like there was always something he was almost saying, but instead he nodded. I'll text you? I'd like that. And he turned to leave, giving Charlie one last pat before walking down the street toward the fading light. Charlie watched him go, ears perked, tail swaying. I watched him go too, feeling that strange new pull in my chest, the kind that only happens when you know something has started, even if neither of you have said it out loud yet. I didn't make it more than 5 steps into my apartment before Charlie collapsed dramatically on the rug, like he'd just completed an Olympic marathon. I dropped my keys on the counter and sat beside him, scratching the top of his head. "You really had to ruin the moment, huh?" I said. Charlie thumped his tail twice in apology, then yawned so wide it made his whole body shake. I couldn't be mad at him. He was oblivious, pure chaos incarnate, but still, I could have had my first kiss with Leo right there on that stupid bench. Instead, I'd eaten approximately 1 tablespoon of dirt. I stood, stretching out my back. "We'll try again another day," I muttered. The evening slid into a quiet that felt warm somehow, like the kind of quiet that comes after something hopeful. I made a frozen pizza because I was too distracted to cook, then flopped on the couch with a blanket and flipped through Netflix without really watching anything. Every few minutes, I'd find myself replaying the way he'd said it. "I didn't expect to like you this fast. I didn't expect to feel anything that strong after 2 days either." But I did. And pretending otherwise would have been pointless. It wasn't until nearly 10 p.m. that my phone buzzed on the coffee table. I didn't even pretend I wasn't waiting for it. "Leo, made it home. Charlie sabotage level, expert." I snorted. "Me. He has many talents. Most of them involve inconvenience." "Leo, I like today. A lot." I stared at the message for a long moment before responding. "Me. Me too." The typing bubbles popped up, disappeared, came back. "Leo, can I be blunt?" My pulse kicked a little harder. "Me. Yeah." A full minute passed, long enough for me to think he bailed on saying whatever it was. Then, "Leo, I kinda want to see you again. Soon. Like sooner than is normal to ask." I didn't even hesitate. "Me. Then ask." Another pause. Another bubble. "Leo, can I come over?" My breath stilled, not in a panicked way, more like everything in the room paused for a second, letting the question sink in. It wasn't sexual. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't even flirty. It just felt honest. I stood up, suddenly aware that I was in sweatpants and a hoodie, hair a mess from lying on the couch. But none of that mattered. "Me. Yeah, you can come over." 2 seconds later, "Leo, on my way." I looked down at Charlie. "Buddy, we're getting company." Charlie wagged his tail, which I chose to interpret as him promising not to ruin anything this time. I straightened up the living room in a half panic, moving random clutter, fluffing pillows for no reason, quickly lighting the one scented candle I owned like that would magically make my apartment look more mature. I checked myself in the hallway mirror, considered changing, then reminded myself, he literally saw me covered in dust earlier. By the time there was a soft knock on my door, my heart was thudding in this stupid, teenager with a crush way. I opened the door. Leo stood there, hands in his pockets, hair slightly windblown from the walk. He was wearing that same navy jacket, zipped up this time, and he looked nervous. In the smallest, sweetest way. "Hey," he said, voice low. "Hey." For a moment we just stood there, neither of us moving, both waiting for the other to do something. Then Leo's eyes softened, and with a tiny upward twitch of his lips, he said, "Can I come in?" My brain short-circuited, just slightly at how gentle his tone was. "Yeah," I managed. "Yeah, of course." He stepped inside, looking around like he didn't want to intrude on anything. Charlie immediately trotted over and sniffed his shoes, tail wagging in immediate approval. "Hey, troublemaker," Leo said, crouching down to pet him. "You behave better at home than you do in public." "I'm working on it," I sighed. Leo stood again, hands sliding into the pockets of his jacket, and for a moment he just looked at me. Really looked. Like he was studying something new in my face, something he hadn't noticed before. "Sorry for the late text," he finally said. "I just couldn't stop thinking about you." There it was, the honesty again. Simple. Not polished. Not dramatic. Just the truth. I stepped closer without meaning to. You didn't have to apologize. I wasn't sure if it was too much, he said quietly, or if coming over tonight was pushing things. It's not, I said. I'm glad you did. He let out a breath, shoulders relaxing. Good. Another beat. Another shift in the air. That same almost feeling from earlier, only this time, uninterrupted. Leo's eyes flicked to my mouth for half a second, then back to my eyes, then my mouth again. And this time, Charlie stayed perfectly silent. Leo took one slow step closer, giving me every chance to move if I wanted to. I didn't move. He lifted his hand a little, hesitant at first, like he wasn't sure he should touch me. When I didn't pull away, he gently set his fingers on my jaw. Barely there, but enough to make my pulse jump. You sure this is okay? He murmured. I nodded. Slow, steady. Yeah, he leaned in. Closer, closer still. And just as his breath brushed mine, my upstairs neighbor slammed something so loudly that both of us jumped. Leo froze mid-lean, eyes wide. I burst out laughing. He covered his face with his hands, groaning. Oh my God, he said. Your dog, your neighbor, the universe hates me. It might, I wheezed between laughs. But I don't. He lowered his hands, cheeks flushed, a helpless smile forming. Can I try that again? He asked. I felt the warmth rise in my chest. Yeah, I said softly. Please do. He stepped closer. The moment returned, and this time, no interruptions. Just his hand on my jaw, his breath in the small space between us, and the kiss we'd both been tiptoeing toward finally happening. The kiss wasn't rushed. It wasn't messy or panicked or desperate the way first kisses sometimes are. It was slow, almost careful, like he wanted to get it right, like he'd been thinking about it long enough that doing anything too fast would have ruined something important. His lips brushed mine, testing, waiting, giving me enough space to pull back if I wanted to. I didn't. I leaned in, just enough for him to feel it, and that's when he really kissed me. His hand on my jaw slid a little, thumb brushing the edge of my cheekbone in a way that made something warm spread across my chest. I touched his waist, unsure where to put my hands at first, until he let out the softest exhale and stepped even closer, closing the last bit of space between us. It felt good. No, not good. Right, like something that had been simmering for 2 days finally found a place to land. Charlie watched us from the couch like he was observing a National Geographic documentary, head tilted, ears perked, but miraculously, he didn't move. When the kiss finally slowed and faded into a gentle pullback, Leo rested his forehead against mine, breathing a tiny laugh. Okay, he whispered. That was worth the wait. Yeah, I said, chest still tight in the nicest way. It was. He opened his eyes then, and the way he looked at me, like I was something he had been hoping to find but hadn't expected to, made me have to look away for a second just to keep my heartbeat steady. Sorry if that was forward, he added, though I could hear from his voice that he wasn't sorry at all. If you apologize one more time, I said, smiling, I'm revoking your kissing privileges. He laughed, really laughed for the first time that night. Okay, no more apologies. We moved to the couch, Charlie curling up beside me but still keeping one suspicious eye on Leo, as if making sure this stranger wasn't a threat to his throne as the center of the universe. Leo sat close enough that our thighs touched, not in an intentional way, but in a natural, oh, this isn't a big deal way. He pulled off his jacket, tossed it over the arm of the couch, and settled in with one arm draped behind me across the cushions. Not touching me, but definitely in a I could touch you if you wanted position. I picked up the remote out of habit, paused, then realized neither of us actually cared about TV right now. Leo glanced around my apartment. The plants on the windowsill, the half-folded laundry on the table, the candle still burning on the counter. It's cozy, he said. That's a nice way of saying messy. He shook his head. Not messy, lived in. I rolled my eyes. That sounds like something people say when they're trying too hard to be charming. Well, he said casually, I'm trying to be charming. His tone was so matter-of-fact, so dry, that it made me laugh. You don't have to try, I said before I could stop myself. His eyes flicked back to me, expression softening. I know. We fell quiet for a minute. It wasn't awkward. Just peaceful. The kind of quiet where words didn't feel necessary. Finally, he broke it. So, he said, nudging my knee lightly, before your neighbor nearly sent me through the ceiling, I was going to say something. Oh, God, I groaned. There's more? He smiled. Relax, it's nothing dramatic. But the way he suddenly looked a little nervous told me it was something meaningful. Well, he said slowly, I didn't expect to meet someone like you by finding a runaway golden retriever. Hey, I said, pointing at Charlie, he's not just a runaway golden retriever. He's a runaway golden retriever with terrible judgment. Charlie thumped his tail proudly. Leo laughed. Okay, fair. But still, this wasn't planned. At all. And I can't stop thinking about how weirdly lucky that is. My chest tightened again. But not from nerves this time, from something else. Something warm. Something that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't realized I'd been missing. Yeah, I said softly. I've been thinking about that too. He cleared his throat, rubbing his palms together. Just to be upfront, I'm not trying to rush anything. I don't move fast. I like getting to know people. And I want to get to know you. Actually get to know you. I want that too, I said. His shoulders relaxed. Good, because I really, really want to see where this goes. A beat. Same, I said. We were quiet again, but this time the quiet felt electrified. Something new mixing into it, something fragile but promising. Leo leaned back against the couch. So what now? I shrugged. Now? We sit here and pretend we're not both freaking out. I'm not freaking out, he said calmly. You literally had your shoulders by your ears 2 seconds ago. He laughed, dropping his shoulders dramatically. Okay, fine, maybe a little. Charlie rolled onto his back, feet in the air, demanding belly rubs. Leo reached down and scratched his stomach. He's really trying hard to get me to date both of you, huh? I snorted. Oh, trust me. He's going to be a jealous nightmare if this goes anywhere. Leo lifted an eyebrow. If? I opened my mouth to tease him, but stopped when I saw his expression. Soft. Hopeful. Waiting. Okay, I said, feeling a flush creep up my neck. When? His smile spread slow and easy. We stayed on the couch like that for hours. Talking, laughing, drifting into quiet moments that didn't need filling. He didn't try to kiss me again. He didn't push. He didn't rush. He just stayed. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like something in my life was moving in the right direction, even if I didn't know where it was heading yet. By the time he finally stood to leave, it was close to midnight. He paused at the door, hand on the frame. Text me when you wake up tomorrow? Yeah, I said. I will. And maybe we can do something again? Without a lost dog this time? I smiled. I'd like that. He gave me one last look, warm, lingering, then stepped out into the hall. I closed the door behind him, leaned back against it, and exhaled. And Charlie, in perfect timing, trotted over and nudged my leg like he knew exactly what had just happened. What I didn't tell him was, tomorrow was only going to get better. The next morning, I woke up way earlier than I needed to, my body still buzzing like it hadn't completely come down from last night. Charlie was curled at the foot of the bed, one paw stretched out dramatically like he'd fought a long emotional battle in his sleep. I checked my phone. No messages. For one single irrational second, my heart dipped until I remembered he asked me to text first. So I did. Me. Morning. Charlie is snoring so loud it sounds like a tractor. It only took a minute. Leo. Morning. I snore worse. Me. This remains to be proven. Leo, I'm willing to demonstrate. I stared at the message, heat creeping up my neck. Me, are you free today? A longer pause. Leo, I actually took the day off. Was hoping you'd ask. I let out a breath I didn't even know I was holding. Me, walk? My place? Leo, be there in an hour. I tossed my phone onto the bed and looked at Charlie. Well, buddy, he wants to see us again. Charlie thumped his tail against the wall so hard it echoed. I showered, changed into something that wasn't pajama adjacent, and tried not to look like I'd spent 10 minutes styling my hair purely because someone new in my life made me feel 17 again. Around 10:15, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, Leo stood there holding 2 coffees, wearing a soft crewneck sweater that made his eyes look stupidly good. His hair was a little messy from the wind, and his smile, small but clear, hit me harder than it should have. "This is for you," he said, handing me one. "You psychic or just observant?" I asked. "A little of both," he said. We took Charlie for a long walk through my neighborhood, down quieter streets shaded by tall oak trees, past old houses with uneven fences and porches decorated with mismatched chairs. It felt different from yesterday, not awkward, not even close, just more settled. Like we'd moved past introductions and into something quieter, something filling in the spaces between our steps. Leo kept glancing at me, not subtly, but in this warm way that made my stomach twist. "What?" I asked, nudging him after his 5th glance. "Nothing. Just..." He shook his head with a tiny smile. "You're easy to be around." "That's funny," I said, "because I am always at least 40% anxious." He laughed. "Everyone's anxious. It's a personality trait now." Charlie tugged toward a patch of grass, nose buried in whatever scent he'd decided was life-changing. Leo slowed with me as I followed him. "So, what's your usual Sunday like, other than panic texts about missing dogs?" "Usually boring. Laundry, errands, grocery store." He looked at me, thoughtful. "Want to do something less boring today?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Absolutely yes," he grinned. "Good, I have an idea." We dropped Charlie off at my apartment after giving him an embarrassing number of reassurance pats, then walked to Leo's house. I'd only seen it yesterday when I picked up Charlie, but now, seeing Leo open the gate and gesture for me to come in, that felt different. "This is the porch," he claimed, Leo said as we stepped onto the wooden boards. He sat right there, like he was deciding if he was going to adopt me. I laughed. "Sounds like him." Inside, his house was bright and warm, filled with plants that somehow weren't dead, a record player in the corner, and shelves of books that made him look unfairly well-read. "Okay," he said, dropping his keys into a ceramic dish. "The plan is simple. We make brunch, badly. Then we eat it, proudly." I looked at him. "You can't cook, can you?" "No," he admitted. "Can you?" "Not really." "Perfect," he said. "We'll be incompetent together." And that was exactly what we were. We burned the first batch of pancakes, managed to get flour on every surface except the bowl, and Leo accidentally dropped an egg on his sock, which made him freeze like someone in a sitcom. "Oh my God," I wheezed, nearly crying with laughter. "Why did your foot look surprised?" "I didn't know it would bounce," he said defensively. 20 minutes later, we finally sat at his kitchen table with something vaguely edible. Slightly uneven pancakes, scrambled eggs that looked confused about their life purpose, and fruit that couldn't be ruined. Leo nudged his plate toward mine. "Trade you 1 pancake for 1 piece of not burnt egg. Deal." We ate, laughing, talking, brushing knees under the table, stealing looks when we thought the other wasn't paying attention. There was something grounding about it, something simple and soft. Not like a date, more like the quiet beginning of a routine that didn't feel forced. After we finished, Leo leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Want to stay for a while?" he asked. Yeah, I said, I'd like that. He nodded, like he'd been hoping for that answer. Then he stood, walked around the table, and stopped right in front of me. Can I kiss you again? He asked. My heart jumped, but my voice was steady. Yeah. He leaned down and kissed me, this time warmer, fuller, like he wasn't checking or testing or waiting. Like he already knew the answer. When the kiss broke, he didn't step back. He kept one hand on my shoulder, his forehead lightly touching mine. This feels good, he murmured. Yeah, I whispered. It does. He pulled back enough to look me in the eyes. And it feels like something. There it was, that quiet honesty again, the thing he kept giving me without hesitation. And I realized I didn't want to deny it. Not the feeling, not the possibility, not him. It feels like something to me too, I said. His expression softened in relief, like he'd been holding a breath without realizing it. He took my hand gently, weaving his fingers between mine as he pulled me toward the living room. Come on, he said, smiling. I want to show you something. And what he showed me next was the moment I realized this wasn't just a crush. It was becoming something real, something I wasn't ready to lose. Leo's living room looked like him, warm, a little messy, filled with plants and records and half-finished art prints on the coffee table. He led me to the far corner, where a large corkboard hung on the wall. At first, I thought it was just a mood board, pictures of color palettes, some sketches, a couple of Polaroids. Then he stopped in front of it and said quietly, This is what I wanted to show you. I stepped closer. It wasn't a mood board. It was a collection of moments, his life, photos from hikes, trips with friends, his old dog, a golden retriever with a graying muzzle, drawings he'd done years ago, scrap pieces of paper with scribbles that looked like half-formed ideas. I said softly, this looks like your brain. He let out a small laugh. Scary thought. No, not scary. Just honest. He rubbed the back of his neck, nervous again. I was reorganizing this the week before I found Charlie, and I remember thinking how weird it was that everything in my life felt the same. Like I was just moving through it. No changes, no surprises, no new anything. I looked at him, then he looked at me, and then your dog walked onto my porch like he owned the place. I felt myself smile. Slow, warm. Leo swallowed, stepping a little closer. I know it's only been a couple days, and I'm not trying to make this huge or intense or anything. But meeting you, it woke something up in me, something I didn't realize had gone quiet. I leaned my shoulder against the wall beside the corkboard. You don't have to make it anything dramatic, he nodded. I know. I don't want you to think this is nothing. I don't want you to think I'm flaky or uncertain or still deciding. I'm not. I stared at him, letting his words settle in the space between us. His voice wasn't rushed. It wasn't pleading. It was grounded. Like he'd been carrying this truth in his chest since yesterday and didn't want another moment to pass without saying it. Leo, I said, I don't think it's nothing. His shoulders relaxed, the tension melting out of them. Good, he whispered. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he took one slow step closer, so we were standing barely a foot apart. Come here, he murmured. It wasn't a command. It wasn't a question. It was an invitation. I stepped toward him. He kissed me again, gentle but certain. The kind of kiss that said, okay, this is real now. His hand slid to the back of my neck, his thumb brushing under my jaw, grounding me in that moment. I wasn't thinking about the past or the future or anything beyond the feeling of being wanted, actually wanted, by someone who wasn't rushing or fumbling or guessing. Someone who saw me clearly. When the kiss broke, he rested his forehead against mine again. Stay a while, he whispered. I nodded. Yeah, I can stay. We moved to the couch, sitting close enough that our legs pressed together. Charlie, now fully recovered from his morning theatrics, climbed onto the rug in front of us and passed out with a grunt of satisfaction. Leo draped his arm around my shoulders, pulling me in enough, that my head rested against him. It felt stupidly natural, like something we'd done 100 times before. "What did you mean earlier?" I asked after a moment. "When you said you wanted to get to know me, actually get to know me." He thought about it, not because he didn't have an answer, because he wanted to say it right. "I mean," he said slowly, "I want to know what you look like when you're tired at midnight. I want to know how you drink your coffee when you're in a rush. I want to know why your face does that little thing when you're trying not to smile. I want to know why you like the things you like. I want to know the parts of you you don't usually tell people." I swallowed, throat tight. "That's a lot," I whispered. "It doesn't have to happen fast," he said. "It doesn't even have to happen soon. I just want to show up. If you let me." I didn't trust my voice for a second. So, I didn't say anything. I just reached over, took his hand, and intertwined our fingers. His answering squeeze was soft but certain. We sat there like that for a long time, talking, not talking, drifting in and out of small thoughts and bigger ones. The hours slipped by in the comfortable way they do when you're with someone who makes time feel different. Eventually, late in the afternoon, we walked back to my place together to get Charlie some food. Leo came up with me, standing in the doorway as I filled the dog bowl. Charlie inhaled the food like he hadn't eaten in weeks. Leo shook his head. "You really are his emotional support human." "Yeah, well," I said, "he's my chaos support dog." Leo stepped closer as I stood up. "So, can I see you tomorrow?" "Yeah," I said without hesitation. "Definitely." He leaned in and kissed the side of my mouth. Soft, small, but enough to make my stomach flip. "Okay," he said. "Then I'll see you tomorrow." He headed down the hall. I watched him go, and when I closed the door, Charlie head-butted my leg gently, almost like he was saying, "You're welcome." I laughed, scratching behind his ears. "Yeah, buddy," I said. "You really did find the right porch."